Welcome to MILF Ministry podcast, where we explore self-love, healing, and intimacy. My name is Ayodele Vassell. I'm an attorney, a creative, and a MILF. Merch is now available at milfministry.com. You can join our live conversations on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter by following at MILF Ministry. Thank you everyone for coming out to the very first MILF Ministry Brunch podcast. My name is Ayodele Vassell. I'm an attorney, creative, and a MILF. And today we have Dr. Taylor. Can you say your full name actually?
Sure.
So that you're addressed properly.
Not a problem. It's Dr. Tabitha Taylor Lindheim.
Thank you. We have Dr. Tabitha Taylor Lindheim here. She specializes in mental health, and in particular, people that look like us. Beautiful, melanated, goddessy, chocolate black women. So today was just really, really important. I want you to understand the foundation of the concept of MILF Ministry. So after divorce, I was focused on kind of finding myself sexually, but it turned into more of a spiritual journey. Because at first I was like, will I be attractive to someone else? Will he think I'm beautiful? Will he think, what would he think? And it took me about a year, just a journey of working on myself to say, what makes me happy? What am I attracted to? What brings out the best in my life? And I was using poetry and art to kind of guide me through that. And I came up with the hashtag MILF Ministry. And Giovanni, who's here, Kamisha, can you turn the camera to Giovanni? Giovanni is here. And she was like, why don't you start a podcast? And also some of my other coworkers were like, why don't you start a podcast? And I remember thinking, I'm just joking. Like, who wants to hear what I have to say? I'm just playing around. And people were like, no, we want to hear your journey. We want to learn more. Another reason why this podcast is important is because through one of the worst periods of my life, I was going through divorce. I took the California bar, failed it. I was moving to a new apartment, looking for a new car. I was going through all of these things at the same time. And all of my coworkers thought that I was okay because I was presenting like everything was fine. That's kind of scary, to be crashing emotionally and crashing mentally and really needing help. But to the world, you present like everything's fine. My work was on point. My daughter was getting to school on time. I was dressed properly, but I was really struggling. So the reason you are here is to talk to us about to talk to us, period, about the mask that we sometimes wear as black women, or as women, period, because MILF Ministry is not just for black women, but as mothers, the mask that we walk with, and as women, because there's some non-mothers here, and we love you.
We love everybody.
We love everyone.
Yes.
But yeah, so we really wanted to talk about how we present to the world like everything's okay, and it's not. And the concept that we're wrapping the discussion up in is the concept of fear and how that manifests in different ways in other people's life. All right, so from there, I will hand the discussion over to you, Dr. Taylor, and we want to talk about fear.
So first off, everyone's sitting here, and we're all looking beautiful, and we've got hell going on in our lives. But we are presenting that everything is wonderful, that everything is great. People ask, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. This cultural construct of this strong black woman, doctors, attorneys, CEOs, bankers, we own our own homes. We're married. We're not. Never been married. We're part of a phenomenon of educated black women, and then we're still trying to find ourselves. A lot of this comes generationally. I'm not going to say I can't handle it. Mama can handle it. Auntie Shell can handle it. Grandmama handled it with a lot more. I'm going to be fine. And then we go to our homes, and we get in our fetal position sometimes. We close the door, and we cry, as if there's some shame in crying. It's release. Well, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And we're struggling because we're not okay. We are very high underdiagnosed for depression. But we don't want to talk about depression in the black community because it's too much of a stigma, but it's very real. Mental health is real, and we need to embrace it as a community because we are struggling with anxiety, with depression, with shame, with guilt. We all come from a story, and it usually starts off in childhood. So there's multiple things that we can talk about today. But fear is an umbrella, and it manifests very differently physiologically. We have a high onset for adult diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease.
And that's interesting because I've never understood fear. You know, so people talk about how fear can lead to physical things in your
Yes, it
body,
can.
but we don't really hear that a lot.
Because
How
of
your
the
mental
stress.
health affects your physical health.
Because you're holding in stress and you're not exuding it. And they say, oh, lose some weight, go exercise. Well, it's not about that. If you're not dealing with yourself mentally and emotionally, that is far worse than sometimes physiological degenerative diseases. Because with that comes mental and emotional well-being. So the fear starts somewhere. Sometimes there's trauma from sexual abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. And sometimes it's being a part of a marriage that you started off one way, you thought it was something, it didn't happen. Multiple relationships that didn't work the way you thought they would work. And so what am I left with? Myself. How do I pick myself up? One of the things as women that we take on is if he didn't text me, he didn't call me, he cheated on me, he wasn't what I thought he would be, as if it says something about us. It doesn't. But we take it on personally because that's what's been modeled for us. Not purposely or maliciously, but it's what we have seen. If he doesn't want us, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. We are beautiful, strong women, but if we don't know it, nobody else will. I think of 3 concepts I like to think about a lot. Valuing yourself, loving yourself, and liking yourself. If I don't like you, how can I like you? Or like me, how can I like you? If I don't love myself, how can I really give to a relationship? And what often happens is that we have this need and desire for affirmation, and we look for it from the outside in. But if we look to outside external entities, our children, our husbands, our jobs,
Right.
our careers, then I'm okay. I'm okay. But what if you lose the job and you lose the husband? Children grow up and they leave. So what do we do at this point? We're just left with self. So that's why we have to work on self to be our best selves. If you depend on something outside to yourself, you're going to be up and down. Ebbs and flows, emotional ups and downs lead to the anxiety, depression, isolation, withdrawal, avoidance in multiple relationships that aren't edifying, but just not to be to yourself, with yourself. So we have to start with self. Otherwise, we can't be our best selves for our partners, for our careers. What's the first thing, ladies, when we are out of a relationship and we're feeling some type of way about ourselves and we're just like, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to go get my degree. I'm going to go get a master's degree. I'm going to go get a certification. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to go to med school. And I know this because I did it myself. Not feeling the greatest. I'm going to go get my master's degree. Okay, let me go get a doctorate degree as well. And in the meantime, going through a life myself. However, those things come and go. What do you do with then at that point?
Wherever
We're
you
left
live
for
on.
ourselves. So I have a private practice, so I'm taking clients presently. I'm full, but I do still have spots available. There's also a listing of African American therapists that I have access to as well. We have groups. I have an African American Women's Process group that is on Saturdays from 8 to 9:30, or excuse me, 8:30 to 10. Because of the high demand that I'm getting, but I am one person, I've decided to start another one, and that will be Tuesdays from 7 to 8:30. So we talk about the real issues. What is it like to be a black woman in 2019? It is just for black women. That's not to say that we don't, as women of color and just women across the board, don't have our own issues. But due to the things that I saw with my mother and my grandmother and my aunts, it was subject matter for the dissertation, and I wrote on the strong black woman and the historical stereotypes that are put upon us. And I use Mammy and Aunt Jemima and Sapphire and Jezebel. And then we still live with those stereotypes.
Absolutely, to this day.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to jump on that because I'll be jumping in and out. So a big issue for me was the morality of my sexuality. I didn't feel free to be sexual, especially outside of Love, love. Like if I was interacting with a person and we didn't have this understanding that we were loving, what does love even mean? That's a whole another discussion, a whole another brunch.
Right.
But I had serious issues about being sexually free. What did that look like? What did that mean? And giving myself permission as a grown woman, paying my own bills in my own house, I had issues with being a sexual person.
Absolutely.
Just because I was worried about what other people thought. And my mom sat me down, God bless, and was like, sister, you were born alone. I birthed you. You were born alone, and you will more than likely die alone. In between is your choice to be happy and do the things. So if you have a hesitation about something, ask yourself, where is that coming from? Outside of respect and outside of something that we all know is toxic.
Absolutely. And a lot of that comes from our family of origin. It's how our mamas raised us.
Right.
Was sex something we could talk about?
Oh, well, no.
Was self-pleasure, was that something that was like, don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. Or
Right.
what they didn't talk about.
Right.
Absolutely. Because of their own shame and discomfort, because they weren't taught. So you have a difficult time teaching something you didn't receive yourself. So at some point in time in the generations, a woman is going to have to be that person that's going to be able to have the conversation, but usually it comes from going through.
Right.
And that's the hard part, but it does start somewhere. We don't inherently know that our bodies are beautiful because society has set up a certain standard of what beauty looks like. And I'm not going to tell my age, but I work with young people and I'm so impressed with their comfort with their bodies, the shapes, sizes, colors. Some of us can go some ages back, and that was not always the case.
Right.
You needed, oh yes.
What's the age range that you work with when you say?
Well, I work with teens, so I have 16-year-olds and I have 65-year-olds.
Okay.
So I work across the board. And so the one thing, they empower me, and they always say, Dr. Lindheim, I'm too skinny. I say, you're too skinny. Yeah, I don't have hips, I don't have butt, I'm straight up and down, I get made fun of in school. How sad is that? Because it used to be reversed.
Right.
Too much hips, too much backside, too much chest. And then we're shaming ourselves because the size 13 Guess jeans don't fit. Well, they weren't made for our body types. And if we couldn't fit them, we felt shame. So I love the fact that the young people are really embracing themselves. It's just unfortunately gone to another extreme. So hopefully we can have some balance and medium because we all are beautiful. But if we don't teach our girls that, they won't know.
We have a question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Christina. So I'm curious amongst the women here. Did you growing up, did your mothers or your aunts or your grandmothers not just teach you about sex, but positively model for you, or frame it in a way that was beautiful? Because my personal experience was that it wasn't modeled for me. Like it was very like shame. Like I knew it was happening. You know what I mean? I knew it was a thing, but it was communicated to me that that is not a thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it, then you were wrong. You know. And so
Was marriage your anchor? Like, was marriage okay, or was sex just wrong? Period. Because that's a whole nother. See,
It was just like,
right?
And so I don't know if it's the fact that within amongst African Americans, like we don't have across the board rituals and ceremonies like a quinceañera or something that we celebrate the marking from where a girl goes from a girl to a woman. Like we don't formally have that. So I'm still waiting.
Right. Set me free. Set me free. Right.
Did it happen? Did it not? And maybe that ceremony for us is marriage, you know, the actual wedding. But I didn't actually have a wedding, you know what I mean? So I didn't have that blessing from the women around me. So I'm just curious, what is common for us? Like, what did you all have it? I'm curious.
All right, so I'll start by answering. So for me, my mom handed me a sex ed book that was like, you know, put the condom here. Here's what STDs are. And that was pretty much it. So it was more of like a sexual safety discussion. But one of the biggest things that I talk to women about now, and just like my MILF Ministry podcast, is sexual pleasure. No one told me that it was okay to demand my sexual pleasure. Like, that's like when we're having discussions about what you want, okay, this is what I like. Can you do that? Are you, like, I was never taught to take ownership of that. So that's like a big deal for me. So I was educated about the process and what was safe and what wasn't safe, but in terms of my pleasure, no. The morality of it, like, is it okay or not okay? Not really. We didn't really have too many discussions about okay or not okay.
Well, my grandmother told me that when you are in an intimate mission with a man, that you are supposed to only be missionary.
Oh, wow.
You're supposed to stay on your back because she was highly religious. And then my mother conveyed to me that it was painful. So nobody did not have technically a good experience in growing up. And then I used to think that it was all about pleasing the man until I got older and started realizing that.
Hey, what about me?
It's a give and take.
Right. What about me?
We
Right.
give and take. We not just take.
You listen. You're right.
Well, I think that this is where group and the concept of it is. Because group is an opportunity, not to hear my voice. Certainly, there's appropriate times when I chime in, but it's for you as women to understand you're not alone. And that's the important part. You learn from each other much more than information that I can give you. It's information, it's practical information, but it's knowing that you're not alone. And that's the one thing that I love about process, is you're able to really work with what's in the room. And as you continue on, it becomes almost a family, quite honestly. But it gives you the opportunity for when one is maybe down, another one can be there and lift up and have a completely different perspective. But there's support in the room. And one of the things I work very hard in is making the room safe. You can say what you need to say. You can do what you need to do. As long as you don't kick the door down, we're going to be okay. But if you feel the need to kick the door down, then let's process it. Where is that coming from? Because it's not about sex. It is about emotional, mental well-being.
Right.
Where did we find out in our lives, usually childhood, that something was not right or was something done to us, that all of a sudden was a view that was distorted, and now it's become a core belief in who I am. And it takes some experience to get past that. Sometimes spiritual, sometimes therapeutically, psychologically, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can't do both. You can definitely be spiritual in whomever your higher power is and have therapy.
Can we say that one more time? You can have spiritual help and
therapy. It is okay. He created, whomever that being is, cardiologist. And if we can go to the cardiologist and be in a mode of our spiritual faith, why can't we go to the therapist and do that?
For our mental and emotional health.
Exactly.
And for all of everyone that's paying attention right now, can we talk about what an individual session looks like versus a group session, so that if people are interested, they know, well, maybe I'm just only ready for group. I'm not ready for individual. Or maybe I only want individual. I don't want to do group.
And it happens quite a bunch of times, often rather. Individual is just you and I in the room. Whatever is going on with you, it's not my stuff. It's you. And it's the opportunity for you to have that conversation, to have that processing, have that moment of disclosure and transparency, and it's not going to get outside the room. Now, group, which is so funny, sometimes people, I don't want to go group. I don't want nobody to know my business.
Right.
I don't want to. And it is amazing how I have found more opening in group than an individual. And I'm like, is this the same person?
Right.
I see, there's more transparency in group because there's safety in numbers. I personally think, depending upon what you're going through, individual and group is very, very helpful. But sometimes
So the combination,
combination is really good. Or you can do individual or you can do group. It's really up to you and your comfort level. And I meet you where you are.
I have another question about choosing a mental health professional. There are lots of people, myself included, who want to talk to someone that looks like them.
Yes.
Because being, like, when you're in a session, it's required that you're vulnerable.
That's right.
So if I'm just giving an example, this is not an actual issue, but like, let's say I've had a bad encounter with Asian men from school or something like that. Would it be a good idea to try to push through that and have an Asian male therapist, or should you leave that alone? Because what if that's the only therapist that's available in my area?
It's a preference, and you can do that. It's your comfort level. We are trained as therapists, psychologists, licensed clinical social workers, and can go on and on as mental health professionals to be able to work with you. But we all know just experience in life and people. There's some people that are going to be able to understand and others that aren't. I always look at it's a teaching moment. Yes, I'm a black woman. I work with a lot of black women. That doesn't mean that I can work with every black woman, and that a black woman can work with me. So it's being open to say, just because I look like you doesn't mean I know your story. You need to teach me, and that's how I approach it. I'm very humanistic in my therapy. You teach me whom you are, and then you allow me to work with you on the goals that you set. It is not my agenda, because it's not my therapy, it's your therapy. And you bring to me what you like to work in. And it could be a Caucasian clinician, it could be a Caucasian man, it could be an Asian man. You will know after a few sessions if this is going to work for you. And feel free to explore again. Don't leave therapy because you may have gotten the wrong therapist. Keep going, because you will find someone out there. As African American clinicians, there's not as much of us. It really isn't. When we think about going into graduate school, if we're looking at being a doctor, it's an MD. It is a dentist. There are more psychologists that are out there, but it's not necessarily our first go-to. That's why the number is so small. And that's why you call someone and say, oh, I've been trying, and I got one spot and it's available at 3 o'clock on Thursday. Because we're packed. Because for this very reason, I want to work with someone that looks like me. And then usually when they find someone, they don't leave anytime soon. But it's amazing how people say, I've come in for this, I've lost my mother, I'm having difficulty in my marriage and so forth. So once I get that, I'm going to be okay. But what happens in therapy is more things come out. Because it's not just the difficulty in the marriage, it's the person who's part of the marriage, and that's you. And I tell patients, however long you think you can do it, you can do it. But most often, it's much longer than just 4 months or 6 months. It goes on, because once you start disclosing and being transparent, you want to continue. Because then I'm able to talk to my partner like I want to. I'm able to talk to my mother. I can actually go to this job and not feel as much stress and anxiety as I've been feeling for the last 2 years. Because ladies and gentlemen, when we work on ourselves, our situations change. And we don't even require the same things that we needed before, because we're getting it from ourselves.
So, we have done a lot of talking, but we haven't really heard from people here.
Absolutely. We want to hear from you.
Would someone like to talk? Oh, sorry.
Hands up.
Okay. All right. We're here for it. I want to summarize what you said for the other streams, because some people may not be able to hear you. So we just had a beautiful comment from an older, beautiful, distinguished woman. She talked about how sometimes we carry trauma from past relationships or things that we have seen through our family members, domestic violence, trauma against you as the individual, and how you carry that with you throughout life. And if you don't have the proper help, what do? She talked about in African American culture how sometimes we do group therapy, like, I guess, inadvertently. So you go to your elders, you seek counsel, you have your... She was explaining that when she was younger, she didn't really have access to a mental health professional that looked like her. My father's a psychiatrist who was born in America, but was raised in Jamaica, and he absolutely believes that the cultural background of the cultural identity of his patient matters in terms of your diagnosis, in terms of what you're going through. So for example, if you have a Caribbean patient or a patient from the continent of Africa, and they say, my grandmother came to me in a dream and said X, Y, Z. One doctor may look at you and say, that's crazy. Family members don't come to you in dreams and blah, blah, blah. My father, for example, may sit you down and say, this sounds ancestral. What are some of the practices that used to happen in your family? What did your great grandma used to do? What did your grandma used to do? Maybe they are trying to communicate with you, right? And so that's something that's outside of your typical medical history book. And it brings up a good point of when I need help, do I want to go to someone who looks like me, or at least at minimum can respect my cultural experience and my cultural identity? Because there are lots of things about being a black woman or being a person of African descent that's not covered in your medical history. It's just not.
And that's where it's our responsibility as clinicians to always be working on cultural competency. I love that you brought that up, because when you were talking about slavery, it's Dr. Joy DeBury, I believe. Yes, and she talks about post-traumatic slavery syndrome. Now, it's not in the DSM, but it's very, very real. And that is what you're talking about. It's an excellent book, and it gives you context of what slavery did to us and continues till today. And I think that if you get an opportunity to read that and go through it, you will have some peace. And it's like, this is what's happening to me.
I'll make a note and put it, when I do a follow-up post, I'll make a note and put that, the title for all the listeners.
Right. I remember doing some work, and I don't want to be the only one talking, because I really want to hear from you and what's going on with you. And when I was writing my dissertation, it was Melissa Harris Perry, and it's called Sister Citizen. And she said the most phenomenal thing to me. I love her. She's a brilliant woman. Being a black woman in the United States today is like standing in a crooked room and trying to be straight. I said, let me write that down. Let me put that in big quotations. Trying to stand straight in a crooked room. How do you do that? You can't help but to fall or put so much stress on your body trying to balance, because the room is crooked.
I want to add one more thing, because you're tapping into something that matters to me. So I dedicated episode 3 of the podcast to honor our ancestral mothers. And in that episode, I talked about the fracturing of our love. How do you give love to a child who literally may be sold tomorrow? How do you give love to a partner that may be sold tomorrow? How do you encourage them? Like, there's a Jamaican proverb, chicken marry, hawk they near. And what that means is children are playing freely, the chickens are playing, but there's a hawk that can come and grab up that chicken anytime. So it talks about how our mothers had to educate us, like, yeah, everything may look cool, but it may not always be cool. And then push forward to 2019, where we're not really living in that physical environment, but like you said, psychologically, the lessons have been passed down. I think that might be an issue where a lot of us struggle with being happy, because our ancestors couldn't just be happy and relaxed. You literally, physically could not be in a moment of happiness, because you had to warn your child. You could be snatched up at any moment. My husband could be taken at any moment. So how do we heal from that and be free emotionally? So thank you for bringing that up, because clearly it needed to be discussed as what could be happening with us, just trying to love ourselves. Because imagine you walking with that and you just want to be happy. Like, I want to trust him. I want to trust her. I want to love. I want to feel free. But we are burdened with all of these residual,
Yes.
you know.
That's why it's so important to work on self.
Yeah.
That's the best person you can work on. And then the relationship will change with your children, with your parents, with your co-workers, just in general. You work on self and things will change.
And I'm glad you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. This is an elder saying that she's glad to come. She was apprehensive because after all it is, I am telling. And y'all know me. Y'all know me. I'm a little reckless with my mouth and my posts, but it comes from a good place, and it comes from really pushing the envelope and the limit about us being free and taking ownership of our freedom emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and sexually. You know, all of it's connected. So does anyone else want to talk about how fear manifests in their life, or maybe?
I don't know about fear.
But yeah, whatever you want to share.
But the thing about the therapist, that I've been in and out of therapy my whole life. I've never thought about having a therapist that looked like me. I don't know why that never crossed my mind to this very moment that we're sitting here. Which is, I don't know why that is, or maybe it was just the way I was raised. My mom died really young, like at 36, and So it's just basically me and my brother. So I was raised, but I think it's just a bizarre way of being raised. So I didn't have a lot of women around me. I tend to stay away from women, as a matter of fact. I almost didn't even.
I'm glad you came.
She asked me to come, and I said, "Well, can I bring my boyfriend?" And so, that's just my automatic thing. Is just kind of stay away from.
Well, you lost your mother young.
Yes, to me, women have a lot of emotions and feelings, and I don't really operate like that. So it's hard. It feels like an obligation, once you have a kid, you got to remember her birthday. It's almost like dating, which is also hard. But I mean, women require a lot of care, right? Friendships, relationships, and that kind of thing. And I'm just sort of distant in that way. But I just lost my sister recently, and so I was trying to figure out how I could get back into therapy. It hasn't been 2 years yet, but I thought, I'm going to need to go to therapy. I just haven't been ready, and I was going to ask you, is there people that you work with and you say, okay, they're not even ready for therapy? Is that even...
It doesn't come up. It's not the way. If you're ready for therapy, you come to me. We don't say, oh, you're not ready for therapy. That's not how I personally...
Well, I had a therapist tell me that. So I went into therapy about my sister. This was right after she passed away. And I don't know what she wasn't African American, but she said that, well, because it's so fresh, you might not be able to have therapy. So I just kind of walked away from it. And then I said, well, I'm in the clear. I'm not ready.
If I'm a clinician, I would never turn someone away as far as and say you're not ready. If you're coming to me, then there's some readiness in there, and you may not stay, but I wouldn't turn you away just because you lost your sister of recent. But it's personal preference. Different clinicians work different ways.
But I'm glad I came, because just even to talk about therapy with someone that looks like you may make a huge difference in my life, that I hadn't really even explored.
Well, I encourage you. I mean, there's a couple of things. There may be some discomfort with women because you lost your mother young, and then you were raised by men, and men are different beings. So raising a daughter, a sister, it's going to be a different experience than you would get if your mother had it.
Someone else would like to share?
Yes. My question to you, doctor. I've been to therapies before, but it was because of domestic violence in my marriage with my children. And my fears these days, I have a lot of potential that I want to pursue a lot of things in my life. I'm from Africa, and parents, they are very strict. So my mother is in my mind 24 hours. And I'm scared of her. Like, I want to do something, and sometimes I feel like, what if she was here? She would say yes for me. What if it's a good thing? So I want to get off that a little bit. What is your suggestion?
Therapy. Therapy and learning how to create healthy boundaries. I'm not trying to be flippant or dismissive, but we have to create boundaries, and sometimes that may be a little distant, loving from afar. If you're finding that your mother's voice is so in your head that it's stunting you from living your life, then you may need to work on creating healthy boundaries where you're able to develop yourself. Because right now, your mom are like this, what we call enmesh, and you need to separate yourself out for the goals that you have. And that will be putting up boundaries.
Spending more than a week or two not to talk to the pastor.
I'm sorry, say that once more?
Lately, I've been like putting distance between us, not to talk to her every day. But sometimes I really, like lately, I'm in business and I want to create this, I want to create that, and she's coming in my mind all the time. So,
well, it's because you've been doing it a long time. You don't just turn it off. It's, well, why do I listen to my mother's voice all the time?
Where's it coming from?
Where is it coming from? Out of respect, out of fear, reverence, because we're supposed to? Where's that coming from? And then why do I feel that I have to do it her way or seek her approval, her affirmation, confirmation before I move forward? Because what if she doesn't agree and it is your calling? Do you stop it because she doesn't agree? And if you do, boundaries, because it's limiting you and stagnating you if that's what's happening.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I want to piggyback. Would you also consider that it could be from, because it's her mom, like just from a kid, by nature you listen to your parents?
Absolutely.
So whatever they say, so it's just, she never broke out of, okay, like, Mom, I'm older now, like I respect you, but I don't have to hear you say like weird, you know?
That distinction.
So, but
Like,
because that's your mom,
I was
you
saying,
listen to her
in Africa,
by
you can't
nature.
talk to your mom like that.
Right.
In Africa,
It's a very
does the distinction ever happen? Like, it may not. When some people have different relationships, my relationship with my mom is, you do this, you do that, you do this. And there is no, it doesn't matter how old you are, you could be 8. And it's my relationship with my dad is the communication. Can I do this? You know, because he was a diplomat and then he knows and psychologically and stuff. My mom was raised by another family member. And then she was not around with her mom a lot. And I never hear her saying, I love you. So a lot of things that she does around us show love, but herself is hurt. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So
well, we're talking about a lot of cultural, religion, very different experience, and you don't just turn it off, because there's a possibility if I do what she says, then I feel her love. So
that's a whole nother
exactly. So then love becomes synonymous with I'm doing what you want me to do. And we search for that. There's a lot of times we look for love from parental relationships that we haven't had in romantic relationships. And that is hard to find because they're not your parents.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that right now.
Okay.
I think anybody in a relationship will deal with that.
I live with my boyfriend and his mother, and it is beyond anything I ever thought I would be in. Their relationship is beyond anything that I think is normal or healthy, and it is a everyday struggle for me to get through this situation. I don't even know if we are going to get through this situation, but it's hard. It's like as if they are dating. It's like it is really difficult, and I don't really know it because again I lost my mother really young, so I'm also coming from a place where it's just like I'm not having it. And then at the same time,
you have a different experience than he does. Yeah.
Oh, it is a constant battle dealing with her and her, trying to usurp. And now, mind you, she is not African American. She is of European descent. So we're not even on the same page culturally. And that respect and everything that I demand in my house that I'm just not getting, it's just bizarre. But like what this young woman said, his need to please her goes beyond himself, me, or anything in his life. And she's also a parent that doesn't say I love you, so I feel like I'm hearing what he's saying. If he does all of these things, then he will feel that love, because that's the only way he can affirm it. And it's like a hamster on a wheel, and you're never going to progress in your life that way, whether I'm there or not.
Right, this has nothing to do with
it. It's just this stagnant relationship that I have to keep watching that is sort of oppressive to me.
What's different because it's in your house.
It's in my house.
That's a different level.
In my house, and that's just, it's stressful. So I don't know, just what you said just triggered that. I was like, I wish she was here to hear this.
You can politely, scream
Okay, yes. You know what? I'll have to search the library.
Sorry, I didn't cut you off there.
Yes.
Just like that book you were telling us about slavery, I feel like that book, because a lot of us, like her, you know, your parents, like you said about the slavery thing and how you can't really love that child. A lot of us children were raised in silence by our African American families and things, right? There's that distance, right? They don't want to show that love. And so there's got to be a book about that.
There are.
We can post that as well, I guess.
Yes, I will show with some colleagues on something that's really good. Nothing's coming right off the top of my head, but
The 5 stages of love.
absolutely, Gary Chapman.
I'll be posting apparently a few books.
Yeah, and that is dealing with relationships and your love language. Your love language may be different than your partner's love language. But it sounds like you're looking for something in how you are able to deal with your particular partner who is trying to get his parental relationship together
That's a lot.
with you.
There's
So
layers.
there's different layers. So, but again, starting with yourself, knowing that I can't fix him, I can only change me.
I know.
And it's you know, it's difficult. It's not easy, and it's a step-by-step process.
We have another time.
I wanted to also add, because see,
You're also between two generations, baby boomer and Generation X. You're kind of that group that's in between, not quite baby boomer, but not quite Generation X. So it's a flux. Baby boomers, Black is beautiful, going to school, making a difference, and that we're going to raise our children so they don't have to go through what we went through. So it's this balancing of, well, where do I fit? And what have I learned? And then what do I take on from there? So it's a very different mindset. But the wonderful thing about it is that we can embrace it. And I find that Generation X, children of baby boomers, are helping the baby boomers who are now kind of like, okay, Social Security, is there going to be enough out there? What am I going to do? Because I've achieved all of this wonderful stuff, the degrees, this, all of those different things that I was looking for success, but didn't quite turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. So that's why generationally, we will see what's passed down from this one to the next one to the next one.
And I just want to thank you as an elder for saying what you're saying and coming out, because I deal with my own fear and my own anxiety. So to know that you're benefiting at your age, and my dear friend Kamisha at her young age is benefiting, it warms my heart, because I'm like, who wants to hear me talk? But not only are we talking, but we're here celebrating life. So thank you for that comment.
so we want to hear you talk. Like, I mean, so just to piggyback off of that, like, it is so, like, I consider myself, if this is a ministry, I am a member
Oh,
of the church. Okay. And you are the pastor, okay? Or the bishop. And I mean, on our day-to-day, right? So we have all kind of stuff that we experience as Black women. And I love what Dr. Tabitha said about that quote about Black women standing in a room that's crooked. You know what I mean? Because I feel like there's a constant need to try to be fixing things, or and it's constant. And what you said about the historical trauma of us not being used to just sitting and enjoying or resting, but you gotta keep going. Like, and so here we are hustling through this, and when we achieve one goal, we're going to the next one, or we want our kids to achieve. So I feel that hustle as a Black woman, as an African American woman, and it is very heavy, right? It is, especially not always having the positive or mentors or the examples or what have you, the raising, you know, the upbringing, right? And so when on a day-to-day basis, when I'm on my Instagram or I'm on my Facebook and I see MILF Ministry like with the honey, because I might be trying to figure out, like, okay, how I'm gonna pay this bill and how I'm gonna take this person, you know, this kid to practice, and then I got a meeting at such and such, and then my house is dirty, and where are my shoes, and you know, all this, and all of this stuff that's going on, and then having a Black woman who is celebrating and enjoying her sexuality, which is which is a source of power. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to say in this space that it is so empowering.
Thank you. Don't make me cry. You know I'm a Scorpio. Thank you.
We appreciate your bravery because it's really courageous, right? I feel like a lot of the things that I hear you, I see you say, or I hear you say, I'll be thinking, right? But you do, and so it lets me know, oh, okay, I'm not the only one, you know? And I think that just to piggyback on what the elder said, I'm grateful for people like you because so many of us, for whatever reason, we kind of keep it in, or we share it with our partner, or we share it with or who we share it with. Like, how do we process, to your point about group therapy, how do we process how good sex feels and how empowering it is, how it's not just physical, but it's spiritual.
Absolutely.
You know, how that whole idea of like transmutation, like taking all that sexual energy and then making a plan for your life, like putting it on your vision board. So I'm going to use this energy to go meet my goals or what have you. And I appreciate the fact that you've taken this platform and that you've shared it with us, because I've been in so many spaces where I want to have this dialogue about what's happening in my body, and as a 30-something-year-old, and most of the time it's in white spaces, you know, because those are the spaces that are open and available to have these conversations. And so I'll be one of the sprinkles in the room. Okay? And, you know, and it's only so much that I can be open, and there's only so much I can process, because there's all of this historical, post-traumatic stuff that comes with it. And if I'm talking about my honeypot in a room full of faces that don't look like myself, there's all this other stuff that's happening. I'm like, damn, now I don't want to say nothing, you know, because now I'm being objectified or what have you. So, yeah, we do want to talk. And the more that you talk, the more it opens it up for us to have these communications.
So I'll be brief because we're coming up on the hour and we are supposed to be drinking and eating.
We are.
But for me, going through I'll say this again. Anyone that follows MILF Ministry knows how important Naira Wahidi, her poetry is to me. Her poetry made me feel seen as a woman, a lover, a professional, all these things. And just emotions literally started to pour. I would write an intro and I'd say, this is how this poem made me feel. And like I said, that was kind of like the impetus for the podcast. Because people are like, oh my gosh, I can relate to how you feel, or I can relate to this, or I can connect with this. And through reading her poetry, and I started saying prayers about being vulnerable. Like, okay, what if I mess up? What if I embarrass myself? What if whatever? I'll tell a little bit of my business without saying too much, but I had a dream about having a young lover. And I remember waking up from that dream and talking to my mom and my godmother saying, I can't do that. Like, the person was this age and I'm this age. I'm 37. I don't care about saying my age. I'm 37. And it's not that I wasn't here for the action because I'm the MILF. It was just like, you know, like, how would that look? Like, what is, you know, like, I was married, I got a child, and I now have a young, you know, like, what would that even look like? And once again, my godmother was like, you can't do that. Why? Says who?
I love your mom a lot.
And right, thank you, I love her too.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I don't know why. I'm just saying no, just to say, like, I don't know why I said I can't have, like, why did I say that? Where does that come from? And then another thing that was important to me was, like you said, we get up, we manage households, we take care of kids. We're always like, did you do your homework? Is the house clean? Do the dishes, do that. How do you center your spirit and transition from mom mode to MILF mode? That was really important to me. Like, what do I need to do? So that's why I started posting the things for you all. Take a bath with some pink Himalayan salts. You know, put some cinnamon in your bath. Put some honey on your tongue. Put some honey on your skin. Light some incense. You know, sit out with your crystals. Have your playlist. Y'all know I'm about that music. But like, you literally need to sit down and center yourself and say, okay, I need to transition from mom mode
to MILF mode. Handstand emoji, twerking emoji.
Okay.
Like I need to make this transition. And I decided my mantra was my orgasms are part of my self-care.
Yeah.
And people were just like, what? Whatever. But it was really like, no, this is a part of my self-care, taking care of myself. And so when I have a discussion with a potential lover, it wasn't like, am I sexy to you? It was, this is what I need.
Right.
And that's where the discussion begins. Like, this is what I need. Do you think you can satisfy these needs?
Okay.
And so it made the process of elimination really easy because men weren't used to having a discussion with a woman that was like, this is what I need.
Right.
I pay my own bills, so I don't got to tell you that you feel good so that you can pay my bills. Like, you need to actually feel good. You need to be respectful. Like, you don't have to love me. I'm not really concerned with love. But we have to have this respect. And here's what respect looks like to me. Here are my boundaries. And here's how you can keep me in MILF mode. Right? Like, how can you keep Ayo in MILF mode? And so it just took a lot for me to get there emotionally and spiritually, of just being, like you said, empowered, of not only understanding that it was my right to demand it, but how can I respectfully articulate what I needed. And like I said, all of it wasn't sexual. A lot more, it was way more spiritual and emotional than I realized, because I had to start saying, why can't I have a young lover? Why am I concerned about having sex? What are my issues with the morality of the actual act of sex? Why do I have to be in love? What does love even look like? Right? Are we just saying we're in love just so that I can justify sex? Like, that was a really, really, really big issue for me. And like I said, I was very focused on pleasing him, and I wasn't really focused on myself. And my life didn't change until I was focused on like harnessing my energy. And this is what pleases me. This is what I demand. And then the universe, like I said, will send you what you need when you actually know. You're like, okay, this is what I need to get out.
And I love how you said self-care. And just to let you know, I don't have a problem with my age. It's just not professional at this point. But it's self-care. 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 Getting your nails and your hair done and looking pretty. Yeah, that's self-care. But knowing what you want, knowing what you feel, being who you are, embracing that, and knowing that I'm not what someone dictated. I am who I want to be. And that's self-care. That's self-love. That's value self, like self, love self, self-worth. That's what self-care is about. Now, we all like to look beautiful aesthetically and everything, but how many of us look so beautiful aesthetically and still, I don't know if I can go to work today. Because I'm dreading because I'm going to have to deal with, hi, how are you? Thank you so much. We're pretending, but inside, we're not together and we're not practicing our self-care. And that's therapy, self-care. However that looks like to you, spiritually, psychologically, however that looks for you, that's self-care, taking care of self.
Hi, everybody. Alicia Hunt, and I'm here as a result of Dr. G over there. I wanted to piggyback on when you talked about knowing yourself and being in a sexual relationship. My thing is that we will give our bodies over to a man to do whatever, and we won't even look at our bodies. We don't even know what it is.
I'm gonna repeat that one more time. She's because I don't know who can hear what. I just want to say it loudly. We talk about giving ourselves over to men or to your partner, because we have people that sleep with men and women here. So, what is very, very important to be known is that she's talking about how empowering it is to own your body, not only like sexually, but like literally look at it, like love yourself. Sorry, I just had to say that again.
No, really. And that was, that's part of my whole journey, my route of being in marriage and family here, being a sex coach. I was born with sickle cell disease. This is Sickle Cell Disease Awareness Month. So please support that. And so when you have a mindset, right? You have this mindset about who you are. Am I sickle cell disease? Am I a woman? What, and it's like, you have to really dig deep to say, no, I am a person who was born with sickle cell disease. to the construct of this world, when you have to identify your race in these United States, it's like, well, okay, I'm a black woman, but what does that mean? So you have to really internalize, because you have all these messages that dictate to us about who we are. So my thing is, it's like, when it comes to mental health, I say there's only one disease. I mean, we can diagnose you. You can come sit in my office. I can listen to your story, and I'll give you a diagnosis, and we'll come up with a treatment plan. But my basis is that the main disease is if you don't know who you are. If you don't know,
I want to repeat that one more time. She said we can diagnose you with multiple illnesses, but the main one, the overarching one, is you don't know who you are. I want to make sure everybody can hear that part.
right? Because if you don't know who you are, then that's where the anxiety, the depression, right? You go out into the world and you looking for validation.
Yeah.
You know, mama validate me, daddy validate me, and these people probably wasn't very good role models. So then you go out and you seek that. That was my whole journey. It's like I sought validation from everything. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right?
Absolutely.
You know, and it just it wears you out. You know, when you don't know who you are. So I am grateful that you are here saying that. Self-care is not just giving you massages and your feet rub and all of that. No, it's really spending that quality time with yourself and really making sure that you can process for yourself. And this is the kicker, because my other sister right here on the end, she had introduced me to orgasmic meditation. And so when I took those courses to become a coach in that, their thing was about desire. And so the thing about desire is
The orgasmic meditation took the iPad out.
But I just want to, I'm going to wrap it up, but I just want to say with that, because see what happens is like when you still seeking validation, or when you don't know who you are, you will feel a type of way and you just want this confirmation. Well, in desire and knowing your desire, men live here. Men live in their desire. The world teaches them how to live in their desire.
Right.
Women, we're socialized different. So
We're shut down morally.
right. And so when you live in your desire, it's about being 100% in the knowing of what you desire, regardless of how the other person will take it.
One
So
more
when
time.
she said,
Say it one more time, please.
so being in your desire 100% is being in it regardless of what the other person is going to do with it or not. Because they may not know how to, when you present yourself to a man and say, this is what I want, that's your desire, that's her desire.
Yeah, if you ran away.
He might not know. He not used to that. He may not know. But don't blame or fault yourself or start to feel bad because you and your desire. You just wait till the universe bring you who can answer your desire. That's been my journey, and that's where I am for me, and that's what I'm trying to help other people with as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we're going to wrap it up. I'll allow Dr. Taylor to wrap it. But thank you everyone for your contributions. If anyone has any last comments, because the MILF needs her drink. And she needs her food. But if anybody has anything else they would like to say before we let Dr. Taylor wrap it up, please say something briefly, because the MILF is hungry. Okay.
Is it anything like too much self-care?
No. No.
That's a good point.
As my colleague said, knowing yourself. How could it be loving yourself be too much?
Because I'm with myself a lot, knowing myself spiritually,
Yes, that's great.
emotionally,
Yes,
everything.
that's great. That's self-care.
passion for working with Black women because it's so important for us to have a place to be safe and to speak about the things that we're going through. And if we don't start somewhere, where are we going to do it?
Yeah, this is a start.
And so this is a starting point. So I think so great that you're starting this and giving an opportunity for voice, because this is very, very important. When you love yourself, value yourself, like yourself, you find your voice. And then you're able to advocate for yourself and in turn, know yourself.
So thank everyone for coming. I'm going to post links of how to access Dr. Taylor. We had another doctor here, I didn't know. What's your name?
Felicia Hunt.
Dr. Felicia Hunt. So I'll post links on how to access the mental health professionals that were here, how to access individual therapy versus group therapy, and I'll keep the honey flowing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. We're out. Live video over because y'all can't see this part.
Straighten this up.
Thanks for listening to this episode of MILF Ministry Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and then share it. Merch is available at milfministry.com. You can join our live conversations about self-love, healing, and intimacy by following at MILF Ministry on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. My name is Ayodele Vassell. I'm an attorney, a creative, and a MILF. And I pray you always have honey for your spirits and honey for your lips.